All right, here we go again. Buckle up.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
First off, there is no altruism in the people I speak about. Altruism is the same thing as transgender people. They're just tools. It's just a tool. There's no normal mental process going on. And in fact, they'll point to everybody else that's crazy, but what's the reality? You can bet your bottom dollar that a certain number of those people were psychologically operated by these criminals to appear to be crazy. That's just another tool also. There is no good or evil. There is no such thing as gray morality in the CIA at large. The majority of it is black morality. And that black morality has nothing to do with saving our nation. It's just like when I was in the government. A handful of people work out of an entire office. The rest are just deep state slugs. Same thing in the CIA. And they're actually playing their game out, how to become that multimillionaire, then how to become that billionaire. It's never enough for them. They actually hire people in FBI and CIA all those years that fit the description of people you wouldn't hire. They hired the people they knew would go corrupt for money. Russia's a great example. So they make it a political argument as part of a process they use to overthrow governments, to have somebody killed as spies. But they're using it for criminal gain, criminal purpose, and really against the wellness. They don't want the United States well because that playing field is more difficult to manipulate. So the CIA has been anti to the wellness of the United States, where I've been positive and dead on for the wellness of the United States. So you see what the conflict is. I didn't know that in the beginning. I knew they were corrupt. And they knew I knew they were corrupt. I didn't intentionally put those 4 dots over the 3 dots that happen sometimes, but based upon what I just saw, I believe God put the 4 dots. It's even more than 3 dots seeing. It's 4 dots seeing, or 4 eye seeing. So if you're transgender and they meet you and need to manipulate you, then they're pro-transgender. If they meet you and you're the church anti-transgender, then they're anti-transgender. And as a side note, actually, what's that guy's name? Hegseth. Hegseth received credit for the testosterone program. Well, if you, I don't even think doctors study transgender. I don't think they care. They just want to make money. But if you study transgenderism the way I've studied it, you have what's called andropause, and that's what he's trying to address. It's actually a valid thing. Everybody should actually address andropause. But if you address andropause, you are actually addressing one of the causes of transgenderism at midlife crisis, quote unquote, or something like that. I don't know if it's midlife exactly, but right, andropause can cause trans. That's what some of that is. It's just andropause. So the remedy is actually to apply testosterone and other, like I said, there's other things besides testosterone, which I don't know if they're going to be that intelligent. And then you're gonna have to monitor blood pressure closer. That's another thing. That's a risk factor, but it doesn't mean that you don't do it. I mean, and you have to teach them how to maintain the mind because things are going to come up faster, come at them faster. You could also have some sleep issues. Again, nothing wrong with they actually melatonin and theanine help you to stay calm under trying circumstances. This is how you beat the deep state without taking some crazy pill. So they're destroying their victim. They're saying people don't exist that exist. Cops are in on it because they're getting gold bars and untraceable cash and coverage for crimes they've committed, including rape. So what you have to understand is the political world doesn't really exist. And I think Trump figured that one out. The left and right world doesn't really exist. Because here's an example of what they do to your mind. And it's very difficult for me because I try to help everyone. And where I can help them. Again, I can't help you steal money from government programs, Democrats, and that's your legacy for the moment. And again, I accept that there are reasons to be on disability that maybe aren't readily available to the average doctor. I explained that years ago when DHS was prosecuting all those cops, and I tried to explain to them the cops were the victims. The cops that you prosecuted were victims of those other people because they had PTSD. And when they had PTSD, they searched for a way to get out of what was the offending thing. They should have been on disability anyway, but it should have been a PTSD disability, not my arm hurts or whatever it is they used. But this is where your minds fail. That's a symptom, a psychological symptom of the PTSD and the panic disorder. And the fact is, other cops may have caused it, and that's the reason they didn't want to look at it, because they were deep state victims. Kill these people out from law enforcement. I mean, they'll go to the point of destroying their mind into pedophilia. So any cop that ever went down with pedophilia, especially that captain that was part of the pedophile task force, I know for sure those women he worked with worked him over and turned him into a pedophile. I mean, they're witches, face it. If you're in the church, these are the witches. No, they don't wear hats. They wear a priest outfit, a pastor's suit, a chief of police badge. What, do you think it was going to be easy? It's all the liberals who are gay. That's why the liberals are gay. Because of the people I speak about. But yet, some of them are gay liberals. So again, what do we call that? Narcissism, sociopathic behavior. But they're devils. That's if you're not narcissistic and sociopathic when you go into the government, the deep state will make sure you are if they keep you and let you stay. And again, they put you out. They committed felonies for decades on end. But what happens is the Marshal Service I didn't know what the thing was about, but every so often you'd get somebody that was transferred to headquarters or another office because of something that went on in the other office. But they never I spoke about Chris Fiore, and he was done dirty. He may have had he was a great employee, but he was like an excitable kid sometimes as far as certain things. So he kind of, again, it's the world we live in today. I mean, he's a lot more controlled than the officers we have today and the officers that were deep state back then. But he would get himself into something because he would go a little too far emotionally. But that's why he was a great employee. He had that drive. So again, if you're a leader, you've taken, whatever here. And again, there were personal squabbles and things like that. Now, I don't know if he oppressed anybody when he was in, like with the previous marshal in chief or anything like that. I mean, that's where it gets to sometimes. But again, there is the point of no return when they go over. And I spoke about little girl telling me about something in his life that was medical that he definitely didn't tell her about, but probably told the administration about. And no, I'm not a snitch by any stretch of the imagination. They're the snitches. So then they'll tell me a criminal. So they'll go back and forth, whatever. These are all tools of spycraft. But because I speak out, they can't efficiently use them to the level they use it on other people. On one hand, I'm a snitch. Then you find out I'm not a snitch. And they were the fucking, again, they're trying to put cursing words. Because I know the church is here. Because I just said F. And you willed it into my verbiage, but yet you want to tell me I'm wrong for saying it? Oh, this is their next tool. If I had God in the right way, I wouldn't say that. I have God in the best way of anybody on the planet, period. The Pope's an idiot. Your preachers are idiots. Even the person President Trump chose to lead religion in this country is an idiot. A spy-driven idiot. The Pope's an idiot. I had to speak into his head for about 2 months before he cleaned up a little bit. Because what you're speaking manipulates the planet downward and makes it worse for the people you say you're helping. There's only one way up, and that's whatever it is. And that's usually based in the truth. Corrupt immigrants aren't okay. Corrupt law enforcement's not okay. But yet, law enforcement has more of a reason to make error and be somewhat corrupt than I would say the immigrants do. Well, because you're putting spells on them all day from the immigrants. I've never seen such an ignorant Vatican as I have over the last probably 8 years, ever since Amherst passed. You're all just ignorant. Obviously, Father Amherst carried your church for years, and he allowed himself to progress and to learn. When he was a young man, I'm sure he blamed people for their own sins. But one day he figured it out. It's all spells. It's all the will of other people. Or at least to the point of realizing, quote unquote, possession. But that's what sin is. It's possession. The question is, are you responsible for your own possession or not? And that's a very simple equation. So they run around calling the person that actually snitched on Slickster in the Marshal Service, who was the guy, I've named him before, but we'll call him Slickster for now, because they've sent the message, please don't use their names. We understand you legally use their names because they attacked your family. And they attacked you and your career for more than a decade. Punishable by 10 to 20. Slickster had somebody call on his business. He's running a business from a cell block, selling hats. I give a shit less. That's my personality, too. I give a shit less. I don't give a shit what you're doing on the side. I'm trying to do my freaking job. Oh, that thing. So he takes it out on me because I am the court security coordinator, and by all intents and purposes, the judicial security coordinator for the district. Little girl had the title, Judicial Security Coordinator. She told the chief to fuck off. Didn't use those words, but she told him to fuck off. There's the appropriate LDS, there's the appropriate use of that language. That's how God would have it be used. So people understand what we're speaking about instead of using LDS bullshit language. Bunch of thugs and organized crime people that speak pretty language. Or organized criminals, should I say. Well, don't interfere in my life. And then there's nothing to speak about, is there then? So the person that did that did some shit to my wife. And I told him when I went to work, hey, don't worry about it. Because he started bringing it up to me. I said, I don't want to hear anything. Don't worry about it. I took care of it. My wife said he called her and started doing weird stuff. Again, I didn't investigate it. I didn't have it investigated. I saved his career. If it did happen. But that person is the guy that called on Slickster because I was the court security senior guy, and again, this is just an additional duty back then, not when he became the GS-13, making extra money for nothing. So he blames it on me. Because I happened to work with that guy a couple projects as Judicial Security Coordinator. He wasn't it long, just long enough so he could move on to the next district after he snitched on Slickster. I guarantee you, you'd be lucky if there's one other person in that district that didn't call internal about something. Even the guys that we think are okay. I'm just too busy if I saw, I developed the case, but at that point I realized internal had no way to do anything. And that's what the effect the CIA wanted. So he destroys my life off of what the other guy did, who probably had a great career and a great life. Right. That's the deep state. That's how sick they are. That's that guy, that agent, the MK Ultra agent that spoke about Wayne Ritchie. That's who Slickster is. He'd have been a nobody if CIA didn't pick him up. In fact, he was at risk of being arrested for what he did to my life and the life of other people as they engage in criminal activity against the Marshal Service and the government. It's not against me, it's against the Marshal Service and the government. That's how whack it is. And again, Jagannath, what was his last name? His father was that famous musician from the Hare Krishnas in the early 70s, or a famous musician, or a Hare Krishna famous musician. I don't remember what their last name was. But he said it. He said, we were going to go do something or something really nice, charitable. And he says, don't do it. We better not do it. Don't do it because they'll flip it around and say that you're. So what was that? That wasn't the Hare Krishnas. Hare Krishnas don't know how to do that. To spies. No good deed went unoperated into a bad deed. In fact, but they're doing what? They're there saying they're doing good works. You can't present bait and bait. There's bait and then there's bait men and women. Look, we're having a relationship. Go to that woman and have a relationship. So what they're not only presenting bait people, they're presenting this world where you act on certain emotions that I don't act on. Which is why I've only had sex with 3 people and would have only had sex with, or maybe 4 people, I don't know, 1 person. Right. And the cam girl thing isn't a lifetime pursuit of mine. I tried to get married there and I knew that they were involved and said it's not going to work. Well, because if you have millions of dollars in gold bars, you can block anybody's marriage, anybody's relationship. They got paid money. They probably had businesses and they were contractors for government and other people. But there's probably cash money that changed hands, gold bars changed hands. So you see all that, and you see Senator Menendez. He gets busted, right? This is their narcissistic dream, to actually engage in the crime of the people they bust, that they set up. I mean, I believe Menendez was set up the whole time. I mean, way past any type of sting operation. Well, the idea is if you close down somebody's life and open it up somewhere, they know this. This is what they're doing. That person will most likely go to a certain degree, some less, some more, in that direction. That's illegal, to stop people's lives dead based upon, well, they're getting ready to rape children. I mean, it's nonsense. It's obvious nonsense that somebody straight out of the academy, you could give it to them as their first case and would go, bullshit. Meanwhile, the people that are raping children are still living millionaire, billionaire lives, laughing. What do you see every day in the news on people getting arrested? You don't see millionaires and billionaires getting arrested, as if they don't commit those crimes. But once upon a time, they were the only people, almost the only people committing those crimes. And no, we're not talking about Trump. The reason Trump was operated in relation to pedophilia is so he would not stop the corrupt pedophile hunter operations, because it's a tool of spies to intimidate you into shutting up or doing what they want. And in some cases, they turn you into, via witchcraft and spycraft, into a pedophile. And then you get arrested and they laugh. That suck. So what they do is they say it's a cold case. And they stay in your life disrupting and screwing your mind and screwing everybody's mind around you and causing everybody to hate you. And then, of course, many of those people are just pieces of shit anyway, waiting for the next little gold bar or untraceable cash payment. So after 30, 40 years of doing this to a person, and a lot of them are in there, because you ever look at the cases and wonder, I did, I said, 60, 70 years old, and now all of a sudden this. So I said, okay, they had cognitive issues, most likely. But what do we know about the cognitive issues? What do we know about elderly people's cognitive issues? They're played by the scammers and the fraudsters. That's who these cops are and who these PIs are. So after 30, 40 years of doing this to somebody, and they're elderly, and their mind slips, and they engage in something, and again, they probably did it to Gabbard's, Tulsi Gabbard's brother. They go, see, I told you this person was a pedophile. But what about these 30 years where they did nothing? You watched them every day, but yet told everybody they're committing acts of pedophilia when they weren't. What is that? What is this? Because they built the system that if the person commits the crime, that they investigate it no further. They don't look to see if somebody tortured this person for 30 or 40 years to turn them into a pedophile. That's how sick they are. That's how sick Rush is. That's how sick the CIA is. That's how sick FBI is. That's how sick the Marshal Service is. But we're rescuing everybody. Look at the numbers. Again, this is not a come to Jesus meeting. This is a come to Hashem meeting, a come to Adonai meeting, a come to God meeting. There's something in the church called a come to Jesus meeting, or actually in law enforcement also. I told you when I first started waking up because God told me. And Jesus told me. Jesus personally, into my mind, said, look, I'm not God. I'm nice. And God is a loving being. But you have to understand, if you put yourself in opposition to God, in reality, not just somebody that hates the church because their mind is possessed by a bunch of church people, so they paint their hair green, yellow, blue, put horns on their head and hate the church. Satan will if you'll be a piece of shit like I speak about, Satan will present the illusion that the church is real every day. The old boy network doesn't describe it because there are women in it to begin with, and trans people. Unless you're describing the old boy as old Satan network. So again, you have to pay in the afterlife for destroying the greatest preacher that God ever sent to the planet. It's just a matter of progression. I don't have a problem with greater or lesser when it comes to reality. But it's not, hey, I'm higher than you. Right. Hashem just said in the back of my mind that what makes you the greatest preacher is you consider yourself less than everyone else because that's how you control your mind into doing all the magnificent things that you do. Always in service. Like, I'm still helping the Australian woman, but I can't, as a physical body person, watch her every day and not talk to her because I know how to help her. In fact, if she was here, there are physical things such as massage and stuff like that. I would make sure she gets that from a third party or me even. Because again, I had thoughts about Monica Maurice early on that maybe we could be a little bit more than neighbors, but never acted on. Because there's no need to act on it. I was helping her. I was giving her things. I was not going to, be that person that she felt indebted to. Right. So I actually had standards. The officers that came around supposedly rescuing women and young ladies from me had no standards and had sex with them. And then when the government was asked about that, they said consenting adults, as if I was trying to have sex with kids or something. But not consenting adults. They're there with control over that person. Some were PIs. So again, that's a gray area. But that's who the PIs were. That's who the people were that created the ghost organization that murdered that woman, that young woman, that they all were having sex most likely along the way. Right. Including the guy running and actually having been a pedophile. But that's who they want. The CIA knows if you select a pedophile for a pedophile hunter organization, they'll never stop. And they'll point at whoever you tell them to point at. So again, as I told people before, stay away from it. If you're a government, shut it down. It's demonism, witchcraft, spycraft. You can look at the individual person all day. They're just simply manipulated to go after who they tell them to go after. They can meet so they got a victim who they've been working over for 10 years, 15 years, destroyed their life, nothing left. They can take that person and link them up with the pedophile hunter that they put into operation once they think their mind is gone enough. Well, first off, you're not allowed to isolate somebody so you can operate them and they'll do what you want. Again, what do con tricksters do? That's how easy the investigation is. Take the template of a con trickster, and again, as a federal agent undercover, you have some con tricks that you're, as part of your toolkit. But again, Psychology, there is real psychology versus the bullshit psychology they use to circumvent law. That's what why they created that system of disruption to circumvent law. And we'll use psychology to do it. And then, but of course, some people told them, look, I don't see the psychology that you're speaking about. Well, that's why you're not paid the big dollars. And may never get the big dollars if you don't understand what I'm saying. See? It's all contract. It's all scam. It's all harassment of others. They're supremacists. The only person that's worthy of being treated humane is somebody that's part of their criminal enterprise. And that includes, Russians, spies that are part of their criminal enterprise, who will pay them the money, or at least provide the system for them to make the money. That's the big spycraft thing. They no longer have to pay you directly because they're controlling corporations, federal benefits. In fact, if you're one of them, you can get federal benefits to the tune of $10 million. And nobody will look at you. And in fact, they'll enlist your aid to go after the victims and the fictitious targets of those entities. Now, well, what about the real pedophiles we arrested? Well, when the mafia runs a sanitation department, they actually pick up some real trash. Any other questions? Investigation was simple. I didn't know. I didn't know they were that corrupt. Mostly I did, like every other deputy in the beginning, you do the court work. And I did a lot of it. And I was, lining up a lot of executive protection and some WITSEC because that's where I was planning to go if I ever went anywhere. Again, it was not a sure thing. I felt my pay it wasn't pay driven. I felt my pay was enough. I just needed them to stop. No, it's a valid criminal conspiracy against the U.S. government that would have netted sentences. Some would have gotten, a little less, like 5 to 10. But there are people in those criminal conspiracies that would have got 10 to 20. This stage of the game, they're fighting life sentences. And for some of them, that's 10 to 20. Right. Then this is costing the nation an exponential amount of money. And that's why they flooded that's another reason why the spies flooded the United States with third worlders. They know third world people will do their bidding. Again, Waltz may have another reason, like he thinks it's where his voter base is. So he doesn't have enough votes, so he creates a voter base. And then allows them to vote. I expect to see, and they're going to cry wolf the whole time. I expect to see massive arrests this election. So what they're doing is the replacement theory also replaces you as just the average person. Like you no longer have protection. Whereas the immigrant has all your protection and protection that nobody's supposed to have. Right. Mm-hmm. I tried when I left the Mars Service just to be a neutral person, like it's old hat. Has nothing to do with me. I'm moving on. Right. The people that wrote the deep state books have nothing to do with what the Trump administration is doing right now. If you go back to what I was saying, you will see what the Trump administration is doing right now. In fact, those people were probably put there by the spies because the spies will say, no, you don't write this, no, you don't write that. Make it just another political argument and make it stupid. So really, what drove a lot of those people was being paid corrupt money and being promised position. There were people after I left the Marshal Service that were promoted to senior positions that never, ever would have been promoted without committing deep state crimes. There was questions as to whether they should have been assessed for the inability to do their regular deputy work. Been for years like that. And some people, they weren't promoted. They were just given the no-show position they always had. After giving up sex, of course, first, and then it's like a corrupt power pack. You commit a few crimes for the deep state. A couple people turn up dead. Some other people turn up disabled. And then you're good for the next 10 years to take whatever time you want for yourself out of your busy day of doing nothing but screwing your coworkers. So they would come into work, do something for about a half hour, and by 10 o'clock they would disappear and you wouldn't see them again till about 4 o'clock. Now, she's part of the deep state. That's part of what she was doing because they used her on me. Right. Little girl was part of deep state. So that's why you wouldn't see her sometimes. She was out there murdering somebody. So meanwhile, during 9/11, I'm out there like gangbusters on different assignments. Because once they had us work in the airport, you got overtime for that. Nobody else wanted to work for another 6 months or something. So it always, like, I'd come back from an assignment, I go, can you go back out? Well, yeah. So I'm at headquarters protecting that area of Arlington. We had posts and stuff like that. And like I said, it's right next to the Pentagon there. And actually, my hotel, the weird part was I go into my hotel and the drapes are closed. As soon as I just got, finished the airport duty, and I open up the drapes. Oh, they baited me during airport duty during 9/11. They were so overstaffed with people that they engaged in bait operation while we were in the middle of protecting the airports during 9/11 on those first couple months. Afraid that I would actually find a friend. Afraid of what? Afraid of going to prison. And again, the spycraft operation for decades to try to get you to kill yourself, kill someone else, rape somebody. Not a single one of those people were tested in reality. They say it's just a test to see how you do. Because they wouldn't be in the deep state. They use it to indoctrinate them into the deep state. And they already know they're going to indoctrinate. So I'm at headquarters. There's a deputy from Ohio. I had my break time, so I went into the tactical operations center, and he was running the tactical operations center in the middle of the night. And we started just BSing. And he tells me, this, I knew nothing, but he said the right stuff. I mean, he came out enough that, theoretically I would know, but I was further asleep than he knew. So he goes, sometimes in the Marshal Service, your stock is up, and sometimes your stock is down. I had no idea what he was talking about. He was a good guy. He's another one besides Goose that assured heaven. Stepped outside the box that you all forced on everyone. So you could kill deputies whenever you wanted to kill them for your criminal enterprise. But in the middle of that, he goes, something like that. Like, I didn't make the connection completely, but he did. He goes, something like that's going on. I guess because he knew of the instances. He said something like that was going on in Arizona. Now, when I was in New York, on that detail, protecting the judge, there were things going on, including bait, that matched what he was saying, or added credibility to what he's saying. So I'm in New York, and I'm on assignment with that redheaded woman that Inspector Dahl took a little bit too much free license with. Never got anywhere because she's a Christian. It's like the wrong person to touch in the wrong place. She's one of the few real Christians I think I met. I don't know her later in life. I don't know if she was altered. Actually, she was somebody that I would entertain marrying at the time. I don't remember her name. So she's driving with this dude from Arizona, and he's relatively new. But again, you get people with 2 or 3 years in that the deep state identify as pieces of shit, and then they jump up over everyone else. So I believe that's probably what his mindset was. But I forget what he was saying and what he was doing. I don't remember it exactly. But he was harassing me. This little shit. And again, his goal was to get me to pop off and hit him. Right. And he's riding with her, which is okay. And I'm riding with a guy who's an eBay guru. And he's a good guy, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't put him on my detail, you know. He's a good person, but and I'm sure he wasn't that far from retirement. So his real moneymaker was eBay. So he didn't need the deep state money, I'm sure. Back in the early days. I mean, they would crash his eBay and then, do something. That's what they would do nowadays. And including, probably. The problem is, we were in Maryland, so we were closer to CIA and NSA and arresting their people. So we were the priority target of deep state before it got big enough to take over the country. And that had happened. They had been arrested. And there were cases actively being investigated. That's why they killed John Luke. So he tells me in the District of Arizona, so immediately, bing. Some of the deputies were busted, quote unquote, investigating a coworker. They were deep stating him. They were stalking him. So what do they do in those instances? They move the deputy. Sometimes. I don't know if they maybe moved them that time, because I don't know if it got to the point where they needed to move him. And of course, he said, it's illegal to investigate your coworker. Now, I had made some steps in those directions, but I had valid reason for everything I did. And they know I had valid reason not to go take it to anybody until I was sure of that person. I had no idea Serpico existed. I thought it was taken care of when, like, the same thing as MK Ultra. Didn't everybody think they took care of that? Well, MK Ultra, deep state corruption is the same thing that caused the issue for Serpico. Remember, Serpico was like, "I don't give a shit what you do. Just leave me be and let me do my job. I don't want your money." Right. But again, the idiots considered him a snitch just for not taking the money. Same thing where I worked. They wouldn't even approach me with anything. Because they knew over the years, if they attacked somebody, I rescued that person. The person may not even realize. I didn't realize the magnitude of it. You're not going to isolate another employee around me with groupthink, right? Especially somebody that carries a gun. But again, remember, I'm asleep, so it doesn't have the awareness that it has now, especially, 22 years later after I left the Marshal Service, they continued on. They had choices. They give no choices to their victims, but their victims end up making choices. Again, I chose the life to be tortured versus, giving in to whatever it is they wanted. Because it's illegal to give in. But of course, pedophilia is illegal, and that would be just an effort to get me arrested and then prove that they were always right. That's what they're trying to do with this. Oh, look at this 30-something-year-old aide. Well, that means he's a pedophile. Well, I mean, of course, back then he was. Now he moved on to 30-something-year-olds. That's sick, man. I dated very few women in my life, and I would have still. I probably would not have dated any more women in my life had they not interfered. Because there was a Korean woman that I would have married, and it would have been over. Because I was awake at that point. The problem is I couldn't bring my wife to the level of mind that I had developed. Right. Again, I still wasn't awake, but I was not as naive. Right. Mm. Trying to clean this up here. I dripped some, looks like ketchup here. Well, the idea is to try to also get me to hit on women in places that it would be inappropriate. But you have to understand, if their person hits on them there, then it's not inappropriate. So it's even bullshit to that level. Oh, they used a bunch of people trying to get me to telling me to hit on certain women and stuff. Well, I was in the Marshal Service, part of the setup. So they isolate you in life. The only people you have is people that work that up and down your emotions based upon, deep state spy master. And they'll say, well, we're just trying to get them to confess. Actually, if you go through what they did and they say that they were just trying to get me to confess, it's illegal. Even that part of it, but it's all bullshit. Well, because if you don't confess, then they can do this to you for 40 years. And if you, quote unquote, do confess, they actually tried to get me to confess to crimes I didn't commit. Believe it or not. But at that point, I already knew the system was so corrupt, it wouldn't matter whether I did it or not. Right. So again, here we are 22 years later from when I left the government. They're still doing it. Right. So the things that were said back then were bullshit. Right. In fact, they told people I molested my kids. Couldn't get my kids to lie because our family, that's weird. That's how weird these people are. Trying to put the thoughts in my kids' heads. Well, to my kids, it would be a failure of themselves if I had done that. It would be an offense against them, being that I didn't do it. It never would. Right. Because we were a normal family until you all got involved. Further, again, you've always been involved, obviously, including in Korea, trying to block that marriage there. And then Senator Hines got involved, and then he ends up dead. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes in Hines' life and in the other people's. Oh, Hines could have been killed, assassinated by CIA for getting involved. Very easily.